By now, you may have heard of the guy who can throw a forehand over 600 feet. He's also recorded a forehand throwing speed of 82 miles per hour while playing in a tournament.
Wow. That's pretty ridiculous, man. I wish I could do half that.
Those are mind-blowing numbers. That is faster and farther than anyone else on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Even Eagle McMahon has admitted to this guy's forehand being the furthest forehand he's ever seen. His name is Ryan Sheldon, and his skill set is making waves around disc golf circles. What does it take to generate this kind of speed and power? We'll dig into Ryan Sheldon's background, take a look at what makes his forehand so special, and break down his epic 82 mile per hour shot. One reason you may not know much about him is that he doesn't travel on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. The only Elite Series event he's played is the Preserve Championship, and that's likely because he lives in Minnesota, which is where the event is held. At the 2021 Preserve Championship, he made his way onto Gatekeeper's coverage. This is where most of us got a good look at his capabilities. But let's back up for a minute. Where did his incredible power come from? Ryan was a lifelong baseball player, more specifically a pitcher. Standing 6 feet 6 inches, he was an intimidating presence on the mound. As a high school player, he was throwing in the low 80s. That's considered good, but not world class. He went on to play Division II college baseball at University of Nebraska at Kearney, the same place that New York Yankees pitcher Jabba Chamberlain played. But his career didn't end there. He spent 4 years in the Independent League, which is just a step down from minor league baseball. He had a career win-loss record of 28-14. Without a doubt, his years of studying pitching mechanics are one of the biggest factors in his ability to throw fast and far. When you couple that with his size, that's a recipe for one of the strongest forehands in the sport of disc golf. One of the most important concepts that is taught to baseball pitchers is called hip-to-shoulder separation. This refers to the difference in timing between the hips reaching their peak rotational velocity and the upper torso reaching its peak. When done correctly, energy is stored like with a rubber band that's been stretched, and if the timing is right, that energy will get efficiently transferred into the implement being thrown. This concept applies to the forehand throw in disc golf, especially when throwing from maximum distance. In both the backhand and forehand throws, energy is created with our legs and feet, which is transferred up through the body into the disc. We talk about this concept in our video on how Seppo Paiu throws for 650 feet. Each body segment is accelerated after the previous segment reaches its peak velocity, which transfers energy through the kinetic chain. If multiple segments are accelerated at the same time or too closely together, the energy transfer is less efficient, resulting in lower throwing power. What hip-to-shoulder separation boils down to is being patient with the upper body, allowing the hips to fire once the weight is shifted onto the front foot. The goal is to create lag, allowing the hips to transfer energy through the torso into the shoulders while the disc is still in the hand. Ryan's most impressive shot from tournament coverage is this bomb from the 2020 Preserve Championship. This is the throw where he broke the Central Coast Disc Golf speed record at 82 miles per hour, and the shot also traveled 539 feet, his furthest on tournament coverage. Throwing his red Innova Star Boss, Ryan releases the shot pretty close to flat. If anything, he puts the slightest amount of Anheuser angle on it as it leaves his hand. One thing that's consistent for Ryan across different release angles is his elbow position relative to his body. Ryan keeps his right elbow off his hip, with his arm in a position that more closely mimics a traditional baseball throw. Forehand specialist Nate Sexton is known for driving his elbow close to his body during flat and hyzer releases.
You're going to hear people say to keep the elbow locked into the body. That is good advice, but not during the reach back or the follow through. During the reach back, you got to come off. Then I'm way up here. When I want to get into the hit of the throw, I am going to pin the elbow to the side at any moment that it can be pinned when I'm throwing hyzer or flat. Going to bring it in close, snap the hip, snap the wrist, and get forward through, and then on the follow through, again, obviously the elbow is coming off.
Eagle McMahon, who has one of the furthest forehands in the game, shares his thoughts on elbow position.
Think about your reach back, hinging at the hips, and kind of driving your elbow next to your hip. It doesn't have to be super tucked in, and it doesn't have to be near your hip the whole time. Just make sure at a certain point you're tucking in the elbow before you explode forward with your run up and lower body.
Southpaw Chris Clemons has a pitching background as well as a well-respected sidearm throw.
You don't have to keep your elbow like on your hip, but you don't really want it out here, It's gonna be really hard to throw a hyzer if your elbow's way out here. That's really It's really, really hard to do. So keeping your elbow in, I like to teach that, you know, and there's different arm slots for everything. Sometimes when I'm throwing big shots, it'll come out a little bit.
Scott Stokely, another forehand expert, has decades of experience in the sport as a coach and athlete.
You're gonna throw a ball, not a frisbee. The reason I say this is that the mechanics of throwing a ball are correct. The mechanics of throwing frisbee are incorrect when throwing a golf disc. You don't generate power this way, you generate power this way. If you're throwing like this, how do you throw the disc at different angles? Clearly you're not going to throw an Anheuser every single time.
Scott continues that the disc angle with a forehand is controlled by angling the torso to allow the throwing arm to remain in a position where it can be used to throw with more power. In fact, you'll often see Ryan jumping to his right during his follow-through of his max effort drives, because he's doing everything he can to keep his upper body angled to the right on his release. On Anheuser releases, you'll see just about every player getting their elbow off their body. And one of the ways that Ryan gets a lot of distance is by releasing overstable discs on an Anheuser. The difference between Ryan's elbow position compared to most other players is on his flat and hyzer releases. Ryan doesn't usually seem to prefer a hyzer release, but when he does, he's still keeping his elbow off his body, using his hips to create enough torso lean to achieve the release angle he wants. Ryan has utilized his mastery of throwing a baseball to help him develop one of, if not the biggest forehands in the sport of disc golf. His understanding of hip to shoulder separation and elbow positioning have allowed him to continue to throw mammoth forehands well into his 30s. Shout out to Central Coast Disc Golf for providing some of the coolest disc golf footage out there. If you want to see Ricky Wysocki throw a 464-foot forehand, check out this video from the 2022 Texas States. If you're still watching and haven't subscribed yet, what's the deal?